Hi, this is Dave Johnson. I'm with a couple of really good friends that we've met through the Niken business. Over the years, we've had a lot of fun through Niken just helping people break through products. I think also education, a company that offers some amazing health solutions that can literally give people a whole second chance as far as their physical health. And specifically, one of the things I'd like to talk about, especially with Phil Offerle here, is just this idea of how amazingly supposed simple things can make all the difference. I look back at just what's going on over the years as we gain increasing ideas as far as technology, more medicine, all sorts of things that are happening, and yet the alarming idea that seems like we're losing. World Health Organization recently has talked about the coming generation, that they are very likely not even to live as long as their parents. I think all of us, if we've been around very long at all, have looked around, and if we've heard of a particular disease at all, it was something that happened later on in life. We're hearing about these problems with an increasing frequency, and also they're visiting people at younger and younger ages, and it's really, really getting scary. Even the government, in many different studies, has indicated that a lot of disease is simply nutrition deficiencies, lifestyle choices, and other things. And as an example, as we get more and more into what you could maybe call foods of commerce, I remember growing up and my mom would say, the whiter the bread, the sooner you're dead. And I remember going to school and they would say, oh, that doesn't make any difference at all because enriched bread has all of those restored to you. But if you read labels, white flour is enriched with 3 synthetic B vitamins and a very inorganic, hard to assimilate form of iron. So got 4 things put back in, and who knows how many things were taken out. We're still discovering all of these phytonutrients, factors that maybe we don't even know they're in there, but they're still important for life. I was over at some friend's house and they opened up a can of Crisco shortening, and oh my goodness, the white brilliance of this certainly couldn't be called a food. And if you research it all, the way they make modern shortenings and oils to get the maximum amount of content out of a particular seed or a nut, it's heated. And it's actually almost like dry cleaning. It's a solvent extraction. It's bleached and devitalized, and so it's just totally empty of any life-giving properties at all. Sugar, all of these things that are just kind of white and dead. And along that line, I think of Phil Offerle teaching us something more about salt, just ordinary salt. They've messed that up. They've taken all of the minerals out and made it all bleached and pure white, and so that it does not have any semblance of all. And this is a critical factor because all of our body fluids are basically mirror images of the ocean. One of the things I think would be interesting for you as a listener, if you get next to Google sometime, is type in on the same line Himalayan salt and Fiji water, and you'll find a fascinating study that was done. Placebo-controlled, double-blind, randomized, all that good stuff. It was 4 groups. One group was given Himalayan salt along with Fiji water as their sole source of water and salt. On the other extreme was just commercial municipal water and common table salt. And then 2 other groups was switched up with Himalayan salt and municipal water, and the other was Fiji water and table salt. The thing that was fascinating was the group that was combining Fiji water and the Himalayan salt, which is real sea salt with all of the minerals and all of the factors that are originally there. Amazing, in fact, astonishing gains in health in all different aspects. All of the body systems, the organs, they noticed improvements. The mind, increased cognitive ability, an overall just feeling of well-being. In fact, even increases in sexual frequency. And yet, one of the things that I thought would be really appropriate introducing Niken, because there's a lot of products out there that are based on water and salt, I think they all have a very common denominator and a parallel path that we're messed up in the salt that we normally eat, the water that we normally drink, and that if we can enhance that, we can give our body raw materials to help us function at a higher level. And yet, if you've priced Fiji water and decided as a family to consume that exclusively, that could affect a lot of people's budget. In fact, as a Nikken distributor, if you've looked at the price sheet, you'll surmise that, my goodness, you could buy a Nikken waterfall every month with change to spare versus supplying yourself with Fiji water, and the world would be appreciative too, because I think one of the Mother Nature heroes today is a waterfall system because of the tremendously less environmental impact, being able to have healthy water without shipping water all over the world and throwing away plastic everywhere.
Right.
But Phil, you've had several years of experience doing this. Could you just kind of go through some basics and just what's happened with people that are using this?
About 9 years ago, we learned about the value of a unrefined mineral salt through a book that we read called Your Body's Many Cries for Water by Dr. Feridun Batman-Gelage. And we started incorporating it into our wellness business and encouraging people to use this salt as opposed to table salt. And we saw tremendous differences, sometimes just within a matter of hours or days, in the way people felt. Things like acid reflux would go away, usually in a day or two, without medication. Muscle and joint pain improved. Sleep was improved. Energy. Always people would come back and they'd say, gosh, I changed to this type of salt and it was better for me. And as we've learned about that, salt is one of the richest forms or the best forms to take mineral into the body. Our bodies are electrical. And it's a physical impossibility to have electricity without magnetism. And we market in Nikken biomagnetics. And we found that when people take a good natural mineral salt as a supplement, everything improves. It's just better. So the electrolyte's better, the mineral content is certainly better, and it enhances everything about that. When you and I and Jerry got together here, I don't know, a year or so ago and talked about this before, Jerry can shed a lot of light on this and how important it is to have an electrolyte balance for those ion exchanges that are required for everything to work like it's supposed to. One of the challenges is I don't think our food's getting any better. I think we process it more and more all the time, and we lose that mineral content. Our water is more and more compromised every day. And so Fiji water is good water, but it's pretty expensive. Gosh, Nikken has a real answer for that, like you were saying, for pennies per gallon as opposed to dollars per quarts. It really makes sense. And this salt that we talk about, whether it's Himalayan salt or real salt or Celtic salt or whatever, it's really important to get those minerals into our body so that we can create an atmosphere to even process a lot of these chemicals that we ingest every day. We breathe them. We take them in the form of water, and we take them in the form of even our table salt is chemically laden. We can't process that if we don't have those minerals.
Yeah, the table salt is completely devitalized. All of the trace minerals are gone. If something is pure white, it just doesn't seem like that's a natural thing.
Amen. And you hear people talk about that. You hear your doctors talk about don't use salt. Stay away from it. But so many of them don't give you an alternative. They kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater. Just stay away from salt. But we can't stay away from salt. It's absolutely essential for everything that we need to do. And like you say, our blood and the circulatory system and every function of our body needs an atmosphere where we can get good, efficient communication from cell to cell, and that means better respiration. Immune systems are stronger. Everything works better. And something else that we learned from this Dr. Batman-Gelage was that you can't properly hydrate with water alone. You have to have water and salt. And really, most of us know that because if you go to a medical facility and you're challenged somehow through accident or injury, one of the first things they'll do to stabilize you is they'll give you a saline solution. They never give you just water. They never give you just salt. It's always this normal saline solution. And so what we're trying to encourage people to do is take a look at some natural mineral salt and a good mineral balanced water, and see if you can't put your body in that place where it begins to work better.
Well, yeah, your body actually takes these raw materials and manufactures other products. As an example, hydrochloric acid. That's key to begin the metabolism of digestion, and you need that raw material to do all kinds of different things. Also, just sweating, you lose salt, and so it needs to be replaced. A lot of new studies are indicating that people that follow the low salt diet actually don't live as long and have more problems than people who have an adequate amount of salt. And I guess Dr. Batman has a recipe for that.
According to his every book that he's written and that he talks about water and salt, he says that for every quart of water that you put into your body, you need a quarter of a teaspoon of an unrefined mineral salt. And what that means is if you'll keep up that ratio, your body doesn't have to give something up in order to process it. When we drink bottled water, it's absolutely devitalized, a lot like white flour, and your body can't process it. And I think many of us have experienced this, where you really get thirsty and you grab a bottle of bottled water and you belt it down, and a couple minutes later your body's still screaming for water, but your belly's full. Your body won't process it. It won't allow it to be used. And a good pH and mineral balanced water, when it goes into the body, your body can utilize it because of the fact that it's pH balanced, it's mineral balanced, and it has life in it, literally. So
I love going to the kitchen, getting a glass of water out of my waterfall. I have a salt shaker right there. I shake some of that into my hand, toss it in my mouth, drink the water, and it just feels good. Kind of like that study. In my own mind, I just have this feeling of well-being, and my body saying thank you. Jerry White, what do you think about all of this stuff?
Several things come to mind. The first one is water is the essence of all life, and we're 78% water. But one of the things that makes a difference between the look of a young person and the look of an older person, I think we all can get a visual picture of that, is the amount of hydration that the body carries. In one very interesting study that was done these are a couple of informal things that some of our people had done. Dr. Martin Plotkin, who's an orthopedic surgeon, got his hands on some Nikken Pi Mag water. And he took a group of his students, the residents in orthopedic surgery, who were walking around the Oregon Health Sciences University, and they would measure how tall they were in the morning, and then again after their rounds at night. And typically they'll always lose 3/4 of an inch in height. Then he said, we're going to take one group and give you this Pi Mag water, and the other group we're going to let you drink whatever you can find, whatever you want. And lo and behold, at the end of the day, they took the measurements of vertical height, an indication of how much hydration there was in the protective cushioning discs in the spine, and they found that those who were drinking anything else lost 3/4 of an inch in height, and those who were drinking the Pi Mag water lost none.
My goodness.
So in an absolute way, the hydration is very different. If you'll take the Pi Mag water and spray it on the back of people's hands with a little misting unit, we call it an atomizer, and then you take regular water, whatever your choice you like to make, spray it on the back of somebody's hand, and come back a few minutes later, you'll notice that the Pi Mag water will be absorbed into the hand. It'll feel like baby skin. The other one will be slick and wet, will not have absorbed at all. Just as an anecdotal thing, some of this stuff is really fun. A couple of brothers were playing football. Got to that point of the year where they were doing doubles. Could barely walk when they got home to go up down the stairs. Well, it turned out that two of the cutest girls in the school asked them to go to the dance. This was really not a very common occurrence for them, and they were highly motivated, but they couldn't get out of the chair. So their mom went ahead and filled the bathtub up to waist deep in Pi Mag water, and within a couple of hours, those boys noticed no problems with their legs at all. They went to the dance, met the girls, the whole thing worked out for them. what are some of these very strange things that we see? What is this difference in pi mag water? What is it that we can do, and how does it save on some of these environmental situations? Well, I was looking through the internet the other day, and there's a organization that says drinking bottled water, however that may appear for you. In one case, it's anywhere between it was the San Francisco Times was saying it's anywhere between 240 and 10,000 times more costly than getting water from your tap and processing at home. A lot. They also said about this water that it's soon going to be as popular carrying around bottled water as smoking while pregnant. In fact, in municipal buildings in California, they have outlawed bottled water because of the waste, because of the amount of oil that it takes to produce the bottles, what's happening environmentally. There are places in the Pacific Ocean, one place called the Pacific Gyre, where all of the currents come together and they swirl together. And there's an area that's over 750 square miles. It's 150 feet deep in plastic water bottles. And all this stuff has occurred since we started selling bottled water. And how long's that been? For some of us old guys, it seems like a very short period of time, only 12, 15 years maybe. What's going to happen if we continue that process, spending ridiculous amounts of money to do that? We also see the bisphenol A problems. These were parts of the kinds of plastics that are used to bottle the water, and that if they're stored in hot trucks as they're driven across the country, stored in a hot warehouse, they'll leach the bisphenol A into the water, adding to another huge problem that we've seen. So from the standpoint of producing water that's usable for clean, the best way to do it is end-stage filtration right now.
Point of use.
Point of use. From an economic standpoint, from an ecological standpoint, hugely different. We can do this with the waterfall system for anywhere between probably 6 and 10 cents a gallon.
A gallon.
Well, all of the things that you hear that are good, if you've studied structure, pH, mineralization, low redox potential, that means that there's extra electrons that are free, that they can actually behave as an antioxidant. And of course, taste. The aesthetics of this. I love the taste and feel of that kind of water. It's just very enjoyable.
That is such a big factor because we have a vastly dehydrated population. Yes. Many of our orthopedic problems, joint deterioration, many of those conditions are too little water to dissolve the waste products in. So you get more and more concentrated acidic byproducts in the joints. Every chemical reaction occurs, all temperature regulation in the body occurs because you're fully hydrated. So we need to get to the point where we get to this fully hydrated situation with a mechanism that the average person can do at point of use, much more readily available, much less expensive, and that's where this concept of NIKEN comes in. But we also are dealing with another factor, and this is along in terms of the mineralization that we were talking about with the salt, mineralization in the water. Water in and of itself, if it's just bare stripped water, and all it is just water molecules, from a chemical standpoint, it will absorb. Let's say you make water in a reverse osmosis container. It takes a long time to make the water, and there it sits in the container. And if it's subjected to air, the air from the water will dissolve, and the carbon dioxide in the air will combine with those broken off pieces of hydrogen that comes from the water, so it's changing, and create carbonic acid. So you will always have a pH that is acid with reverse osmosis water. What we're using natural minerals added back to the water to make it more alkaline and much more appropriate for the body's use. Now, when we do that, and then as we were talking with the mineral salts that have how many minerals in?
57 identified minerals in that natural salt, in the real salt.
All of these minerals are capable of being key ingredients in certain metabolic processes.
Right.
Take them away, and you end up with weaknesses in the system.
Pretty much every metabolic process has a mineral as a coenzyme or factor to make that thing work. And pretty much everything that's bad almost is, you could say, as a mineral deficiency. And of course your body cannot make minerals. They have to be supplied.
Exactly.
And yet the body does some amazing things, and I love this concept. It's called a concept of homeostasis, and it means that it has to stay within a very narrow band in many different areas, whether it's communication, whether it's pH. It has to stay in a very narrow band. The pH, for example, can be from 7.2 to 7.4, maybe even up to 7.6. If it goes above that, you're dead. If it goes below that, the blood, you're dead. And it has this very complex machinery to maintain that. We maintain our temperature in a very narrow range. It gets too high, we all know that fever, that we get sick. You get hypothermic when you get too low, and you die from it. So these factors are also very well controlled in homeostasis if you have what's called the redox signaling molecules. It's a whole new area of science. There's lots of study that's going into it. And surprisingly, these molecules that are turning on switches and off switches within the cell to indicate what proteins need to be made, what DNA needs to be replicated, what certain types of things happen for you to accommodate to your environment, for each cell to live appropriately, and the changes, the stressors, the things that it lives in. These switches have to be in the right order and done well. And those, interestingly enough, many of those switches are triggered by the balance of molecules that are made strictly from two sources, water and salt.
Exactly.
And those multiple molecules that are made in pairs in the body system. They're used when that balance changes ever so slightly. It indicates massive changes in what the cell should do. This is a communication system. Another interesting factor is that the attack that the body will do on bacteria and viruses, it uses these very interesting byproducts. They're oxidizers or reducers, very strong in what they do, to do two really cool things. One of them is, like little cannons, they roll in and they will shoot those things at the bad guys.
Free radicals can actually be good.
In that case,
they
very
kill
true.
things, and we want them to.
So viruses, mold, spores, bacteria, and parasites many times can be attacked by the body using the immune system, and its preferred method is to use these radicals.
But you're not going to get those in your system if you're drinking bottled water.
That's right.
That's been filtered. And you're certainly not going to get those conditions right so that the body can do those things efficiently if you're taking regular table salt, because it doesn't have those.
Just like the study Dave was telling us about in the beginning,
Right.
you get the right water, the right salt together, and they make all these differences. You miss it, and you missed it totally.
And there's supplements that are based on this idea. If you want to read something fascinating, Google Rene Quinton. He was a scientist that actually over 100 years ago, and he came up with this very special oceanic elixir that was taken from the blooms of plankton. He would get this special seawater, and he felt that it had almost magical substances, genetic information, all sorts of things from just fundamental life. And he would give this to people, and it actually grew up into an operation that included 69 different clinics. He collaborated with a lot of doctors and treated literally hundreds of thousands of people with all sorts of different maladies with a very high degree of success. In fact, experimenting with this, he actually would bleed out animals and replace that with this substance. In fact, it became known as Quinton marine plasma. And actually, the animals, they did very good and had a boost in health, replacing a very good sized percentage of their blood with this substance. And to this day, there's still a very loyal following of people to use marine plasma for health benefits. A lot of athletes are using it and swear by its ability to help them perform better.
Really what they've done is they just changed the environment.
Yeah, optimizing with the very best stuff. The thing I think is really good on a supplement like this, you still want to drink water all the time rather than municipal. You want to use something like the Nikken Waterfall and use a natural whole sea salt, but that might give an extra boost. Just as an example, if you have bad digestion, go to the health food store and get betaine hydrochloride to prime the pump and get the digestion going. And then afterwards, if you're on the real salt and real water, your body will make that and things will get going.
Well, this discussion kind of harkens to a concept of fundamentals. And if we think about the old famous coaches and somebody trying to be very good at what they do, without the basic fundamentals, there's nothing to build on. Right. The fundamentals of dance, the fundamentals of music. If you don't have the fundamentals, and what we can do is we can get all kinds of fancy with adding all kinds of things, but if we don't have the fundamental basis to work with, we can't make any of it work.
That's right.
In my own home pool in our backyard, unless we can get the pH within a narrow range, none of the chemistry works. And the body works in a very similar way. So these are two things that we can do to really augment it. One thing before I forget was another informal study that was done by one of our folks who found that they did a study on hydration at a local health club. And in this, they would shine the light through your foot, and the reflected amount back would indicate how hydrated you were. And they took 200 people within the club, and they tested them, and they had a theoretical maximum that they had. Well, this is probably what a cell would be if it was perfectly hydrated. And they found that all the people in the club, as they tested them, some were drinking as much as a gallon of water a day, and the highest percentage of hydration they found was 68%. But they had a handful of people, maybe a dozen, that were drinking this Nikken Mag water, and every one of them came out over 100% on their arbitrary scale. There's something very different about what this does. When we look at this as our basic fundamental pieces, and we put those fundamental pieces together, they are some of the fundamental pieces, but not all of the fundamental pieces. And in our last discussion, we talked about water, salt, and grass. And we said, what is probably a really terrific way to fundamentally add the basic nutrient structure as completely as we possibly could in the most simple application? And it turns out to be barley grass extract. And that barley grass extract has the ability to put out extreme amounts of antioxidants and superoxide dismutase, etc. And then we also look at the ability of this material to have 16 times as much calcium as cow's milk, and multiple times more iron than spinach. So very much nutrient factor. In fact,
every essential amino, what is it? Just probably the closest thing to a perfect food that there is.
And one of the things people have a concern about is, well, would I have a gluten intolerance? This is grass that's harvested before the grain head develops. And it's developed the nutrient base, tens of thousands of different phytochemicals within it, that many of them we don't even know what they do. Why take those out? Why? It's always struck me as kind of interesting when people say, I'm going to build my vitamin regimen and I'm going to go take these very purely devised vitamins. And most people don't know that predominantly vitamins are taken from coal tar.
Synthesized.
And so once the coal tar that's been sort of digested and stuck in the earth and turns into tar, you can break them out individually. That's a very expensive proposition, and it's a very weak proposition. You take the myriad number of different nutrients, proteins, vitamins, minerals, and so forth, and you tried to rebuild it off of things you buy in the store, tens of thousands of times more expensive again than if you went with the original that developed in the plant in the first place. So we've chosen that barley grass would be the perfect extract based on Dr. Hagiwara's work in Japan. to put in conjunction with these other two, and a pretty powerful base to work from.
And it's interesting that barley grass extract has one of the highest concentrations of natural sodium. So it kind of in and of itself creates that atmosphere for those ion exchanges. Sodium is our friend, and we haven't been directed that way by the medical profession. They have us believing that sodium is the culprit, and really it's an essential element that we need to have. So we got a super rich food product, we've got a super rich salt product, and we've got a really bioavailable water. And I think that's a great way to get those fundamentals, like you say, into everybody's diet.
Well, it's so elegant and bang for the buck. There's a lot of things you can do, but I like doing this for pennies so everybody can do it. And you want to actively do things to make your environment just as optimal as possible. Drink the very best water, eat the very best food, and boy, the concentrated goodness of jade greenzymes and real salt, Himalayan. It costs a lot more than table salt, but it's still just pennies per month. And if you like to eat, it's just delicious. It tastes so much better than the other kind. And the same thing with the water. I love it when somebody comes over, a guest or somebody, to our house, and I'll say, hey, come in the kitchen, let me show you something. And we live in Coeur d'Alene. We have a really nice aquifer, and compared to just about anywhere else in the country, we have better water. And I'll just kind of explain that, and I'll get a clear glass out of the cupboard, and I'll fill it just a little bit with tap water. I'll swish it around a little bit, and I'll say, hey, smell this. And, of course, the municipal chemicals that they've added to protect us, they don't smell good. And, of course, our smell and taste are connected quite strongly, and so that predisposes the taste, and they always kind of, it's not good. They turn up their nose when they drink it. And then I just dump that out, and then I fill it with waterfall water, and I'll say, smell this. It doesn't stink. Taste it. Smooth, clean, sweet. And they say, how much is that? And I've sold another waterfall. Made another friend.
Recently had my yoga instructor. She, fascinating lady, and she has her 11-year-old son. She wants the best for him that she can get. Constantly trying to get him to drink water. And kids just don't want to drink water. It reminds me of the old prospector who had a mule and a dog, and he'd use the dog to test whatever water source they were going. If the dog wouldn't drink it, even though it was crystal clear, we better not be drinking that. And they could sense it. And the kid, like a canary in the gold mine, knew that this water wasn't any good for him. And the instant that he got a hold of this Hymag water, it was complete. That's all he wanted all day long. Their systems know very well. And there's probably many reasons why we have a population of people that are spending 240 to 10,000 times more on bottled water than they are on tap water. They intrinsically know. They know from getting all this advertising of all the bad stuff that's going on in the wells and all the stuff going with the drugs and stuff that we have in the water. I'll give you a scary one here in a second. We also know that they've got to drink it. And if they drink it and they love it and they got to have it, that makes everything better. Well, back to that really interesting little story I was telling. I was reading the other day, and maybe you sent it out to us, Dave, was the relationship of Prozac in the water with a very interesting gene change in fish. And this Prozac in the water was approximately the same concentration that we find Prozac in the water of many, many, many wells, whether they be municipal or private. And there's nobody that had enough money to filter that out unless it was done at an end-stage filtration. And they found that in the fish, the gene that represents human autism changed in the fish with Prozac in the water at the levels that we see in the groundwater being pumped through the fish's cage and environment.
And we all know just a huge increase in autism the last few years. Talking about fish, Popular Science a few months back had an article, and I can't remember the name of the river, but 100% of smallmouth bass had grill parts growing on them, egg sacs.
Yeah, I actually saw that article,
scary.
And it also said that 4 major rivers in the South had every male largemouth bass. Every male largemouth bass in all 4 rivers had female reproductive parts.
Kind of scary, isn't it?
So egg sacs is what they were looking at.
Absolutely.
And we know that there's been a precipitous drop in male sperm counts across the world. Why is that?
Because we don't understand the
I don't know.
fundamentals. We don't understand the fundamentals, Jim.
So we'll do a big testosterone growl here and say we're bringing back men.
Well, I love having something that gets all of the bad and puts good into it. We should do it and share the good word.
And change some lives.
Tell a couple of stories. You go out on the Indian reservations where diabetes is bad enough in the general population, but particularly devastating to the American Indians. And I guess they have clinics there and give away free meds. And you go and educate them about this.
When they let us in, Dave, we'll go and talk to them, and we've actually, with their permission, taken people who have a very high blood sugar count with the testing of the blood glucose. And we give them a little bit, just a few ounces of Pymag water and just a few grains of this natural mineral salt. And within a couple of minutes, we see changes as much as 50 points in just a couple of minutes without medication.
Long term, what's happening with these people?
Long term is they're not visiting the clinics as often as they used to, and that means a different quality of life. I help people understand that even the insulin that they sell to you is not your insulin, and there are challenges with that as well. And we've got a lot of challenges, but most of them start with an education process, and hopefully somebody can find something here to get encouraged about and maybe try a little natural salt and some good water and some good nutrition. Just see what a difference it makes in their lives. So,
You'll feel better.
amen.